Hey sports fans, how you going? Welcome back to round 4 of Moxing Day Highlander. I'm joined in the booth here by Porra Gilligan. How you going?
I'm excellent. Well, as excellent as one can be after a 1-2 drop,
Yeah, I
but
mean that's
I
the
do
thing,
anything for
right?
streams.
Like if you're in the booth with me, you're the answer to how you're going is probably already known. Hey.
Yeah, exactly. And the answer to that question is I'm having a great time.
So we're in round 4, 5 rounds of Swiss today. Before we cut to the top 8, our feature match this round. Let's actually get down to the table straight away. How you doing out there in Discord land and in YouTube? We're here for both of you. So today we have Niall Bowl again, returning from his round 3 victory against
Lovely.
Calvin Ferring. We haven't seen Calvin yet today, so I don't know what he's playing. We'll have to see how we go there.
I'm sure she'll become apparent.
Did you play against either of these players?
I did not know. I played against Tom Clift in the 4th round, and when I say I played, I mean I conceded to. I played against Michael Billinghurst in round 3 on a new variation of his Esper Oracle list, in that it wasn't Esper, it was actually Sultai.
Okay.
So he could pivot if his combo plan didn't work and just rely on nice cards like Oko and Tasiga. I can't recall the name of my round 1 opponent, unfortunately, but they were playing good old-fashioned Jund, which I'm always happy to see.
Him.
Yep. And round 2, I was against John Obliquely, who was on a Jeskai combo control list with a Splinter Twin kind of is the combo element.
Nice. And what were you playing?
I was playing my trademark No You lands-based mid-range, so primarily red, black, and green with a minor white splash, strip mines and Ren and Sixes and Caracases, ahoy.
All right. So we're off to the races here. We've got Niall leading off on a
I think
Triome,
that's Calvin.
and Calvin with a fetch land. What
Yep.
are we fetching? Let's see if we can get any info on what he's playing. It looks like a
That's
Narset.
a Jace Wielder of Mysteries on the bottom of
A
his deck.
Jace, is it? Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's the War of the Spark Jace. So, I'm
perhaps we'll
guessing
plug
it's
in
probably Grixis Historical.
Oracle question mark. See how that goes for us.
I see that Niall rather is also a gentleman of culture and uses the Alt Art Showcase Triomes, of which I'm a huge fan.
They're fine. They're fine. Look, they're new enough that I can't tell the difference between them anyway. That's where I stand on them.
Oh, if I didn't know Niall's deck in advance, I wouldn't be able to tell you which one that is.
That's fair enough.
Creeping Tar Pit from Niall for get ready. Turn 2, yet to cast a spell.
You don't need spells.
Nope.
Spells are for blockers.
That's
and
an
a Hymn to
untapped
Turak.
Overgrown Tomb as well
Gross.
from Calvin.
Hymn to Turak resolving. That's not where you want to be in these
Absolutely
sort of
not.
mid-rangey mirrors. Rolling up a 5 and a 1, so let's see what's going. Colligan's Command and Bayou.
Okay, let's hope he's got another third land in his hand. Otherwise, this game could start slipping away from him.
Could be a swift end, absolutely.
It looks like Niall's got a Leovold in his hand there, which is a pretty potent turn 3 play.
Yeah, it's just one of those sort of mid-rangey cards. It has a sort of taxing effect on your opponent. It's not exciting by any means. You know, it's not one you're like, yes, Leovold, but as an opponent, you can definitely be like, no, Leovold.
Don't like that.
Really depending on the hand.
Sacrifice effects or just, playing on a completely different axis are basically the only way to fundamentally beat a Leovold.
Yeah, so we'll see whether that's the 3-drop of choice. I don't know whether there's other 3-drops in his hand. I think I saw a Kess.
And I saw a Force of Negation right up the back.
Okay, I mean, that's a 3-drop, sort of.
Yeah, indeed. It does require something else on the stack in order to be relevant.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. And Calvin, not much to speak for at the moment, just a preordain and him to Turak. Just posturing, really. Hasn't had any reason to commit to the board. I think I can see is that a Cling to Dust and perhaps a Daze? That is definitely a Daze.
Ooh.
That's an interesting decision by Calvin. Going back down to 1 land. Happy to do that in exchange for not having the Leovold taxing him on every card he wants.
Exactly, because it is a deck. If it is an Oracle deck, it's a deck that certainly needs to draw a lot of cards and only requires, at minimum, 4 mana to execute its game plan.
Very true, very true. Baleful Strix for Niall. One of those sort of, it's the glue that holds these decks together.
You're never unhappy to draw it.
And is that a Cling to
That's
Dust?
the clean, yep, targeting the Colligan's Command.
Alright, just, cashing that in for a card.
Indeed.
Cling to Dust, the gift that keeps on giving. It was relatively recent printing. You can cash it in for a card early, you can use it to disrupt a combo play, and then later on in the game, depending on how late the game goes, with 1 more land here, Calvin could cash in the rest of his graveyard for another card.
Absolutely, it's in my sideboard and I'm very happy it's in there.
It's just one of those really powerful cards that just, it's going to be in the sideboard or main deck of a lot of decks for a long time.
Absolutely. I think I saw Billinghurst main decking it today, actually.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin is as well. We see Oko coming down here for Nile.
Delightful.
That's he's a big guy, and he's going to make that Oko big, possibly. So either going to elk up the Oko, the Baleful Strix, or
It's an
he's
interesting
going
decision,
to
yeah.
make a food. What's it going to be?
It's a food token.
All right, and the bird just getting over for that customary 1 damage.
Just a little. It's a clock, but a slow one.
I chastised Nile last round for not attacking with the Baleful Strix the turn that he Toxic Deluged. So it turns out he heard me here.
Yep.
Fetching in response to an Abrupt Decay. I don't know whether Nile might be playing Veil of Summer, or whether Nile's about to waste a... Okay, alright, it's attack.
Just saving some time.
Just trying to fake out Calvin here, maybe.
Yep.
Seeing if, he can get any value from his opponent thinking more or less of him.
I mean, that's one of the fundamental aspects of playing at this level of play. It's to keep in mind your opponent doesn't have all the information that you have, and more often than not, they'll assume you've got better cards than you do.
It's very true, yeah. I mean, I'm sure the moment he went to the fetch land, Calvin thought the exact same thing as me of, oh no, is this Veil, or is my opponent a dummy?
Exactly. No, that exact same thing happened to me in my round against Billinghurst.
Oof.
And I saw it coming, and then there was nothing I could do about it. Because if they've got it, they've got it,
That's exactly it. Veil of Summer really changes the landscape of games when it does happen. What is this? This is an opposition agent, is that right?
Yep, I believe so.
Yeah, we've only seen one of these today, and it didn't manage to catch any fetch lands or anything like that.
Indeed.
But it's one of those cards where, even if it doesn't have a visible effect, it still has an invisible effect on the game, where... your opponent might be sandbagging their tutors or their fetch lands because they can't play them into this opposition agent.
Absolutely. And it's also a recent printing of a difficult to get a hold of set.
Very true.
I would certainly love to have one, but I do not.
So it's, I call them sort of Mother of Runes effects, where, you never see a Mother of Runes actually tap to use its ability. But the effect that it has on the game is profound, even... though it's not using its abilities,
Oh, yes, it's the principle of détente.
Him to Turak here.
Oh, he got you back. Is this
fire.
Is this going to see a counterspell of some kind?
It looks like it might be a Drown in the Lock in the front of Calvin's
It'll
hand.
certainly get it.
Yeah, the 5 cards in the graveyard on Nile's side. The Cling to Dust didn't do that much work.
Indeed, and we may see a counter war here over the 2 cards that him represents.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good one to fight for. Him to Turak is sort of like a 2-mana divination in some regards.
Yeah.
And a Dreadball coming down on the opposition agent.
I see. Perhaps Niall's sandbagging the Force of Negation. He's perhaps placed Calvin on an Oracle deck of some kind and is holding on to it for that Tainted Pact or Demonic Consultation.
Very possible. I mean, Force of Negation also can't protect your sorceries very well with its the free cast having a restriction on its timing.
Indeed.
So this is very different from the games we've seen today. This is really a sort of control-y battle where there's a lot of fights on the stack. All of our other games we've seen today have been, someone lands a haymaker and pulls ahead with that, or something along those lines.
Indeed.
Does that unearth? Is it cast or cycled? Unearth there being cast on the opposition agent. We'll get that one up on the screen for you.
Very old printing, that one.
Yeah, that would be the original Urza's Legacy one.
Splendid.
And that's being followed up by a Tasiga. That's
a big turn.
That's a lot of power on the board. That's whew. Niall's going to have to find a button to get himself out of this one. That's...
And what's Calvin leaving in his graveyard?
That's the important question.
Drown in the Lock, certainly.
Exiling some lands, leaving Drown, Abrupt Decay, Cling to Dust, and what looks like a fetch land there.
Indeed.
So Tasiga being a 4/5, there's 7 power in play. Granted, there's a Baleful Strix on defense on Niall's side of the board, but if that does happen to leave, then it's a very fast clock coming across.
Absolutely. It's one of the classic creature matchups in Eternal Formats is your Baleful Strix versus my Tasiga.
Yeah, we've seen that in Legacy. We don't get to see it in Modern, unfortunately.
Absolutely not.
Quite common here in Highlander as well. Looks like Niall might be holding a Snapcaster Mage.
Oh.
That's a good way to break up this board.
Or him to Turak if he thinks he can handle the Tasiga some other way.
Yeah, either of them are sort of defensible choices.
Is this a main phase? So it suggests he's going for definitely one of those sorceries.
Absolutely, yeah. And the opposition agent being the target of choice there.
Maybe he's got some...
A fetch land, I see.
Does he need to pay for that Dreadball, perhaps?
Yes, we will need to get a judge in on that one. You want to go for a run for me?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Watch out for the cable. Yeah, I mean, Snapcast are good, being able to recast cards from the graveyard, but if it did it for free, oh boy, would that be something else entirely. Gee whiz. Looks like he did decide to pay with those lands and then resolving the fetch land after the fact, getting the Underground Sea. The important thing is that he didn't use the land that he fetched to pay for the Dreadball. That would be very powerful in the face of opposition agent there.
Indeed.
So, not sure whether Niall had a 3-drop to play down after that, or if he was just once again faking on the main phase fetch land there. Perhaps just trying to get it down under another reanimation effect.
Indeed, or perhaps he's winding up for some kind of Haymaker or double spell turn for which he needs more than mana than he had.
It looks like he's holding an Uro.
Indeed. And he's certainly got a stacked graveyard, although Calvin does have that Cling to Dust hanging around.
Very true. So he would need to stack his triggers correctly in order to get at that.
That's a gift I'm given.
Not quite. It's
that's a fact or fiction.
Fact or fiction. I just typed in fact given. That's not what it is. It's not a fact given.
I'm sorry I misled you.
Trying to find it here. The problem is with Scryfall, it searches for anything with the word fact or the word fiction.
All those little characters in that order, so we got a lot of artifacts cards.
Yes, alright, we got it. So fact or fiction resolving, we see Thassa's Oracle 4 lands.
Well, my word.
The good news is there's not lots to think about here.
I think I can predict which pile Calvin will choose.
there's which land do you put with the Oracle is about the only question. There's no thoughts of, if there was a counterspell in there as well, for example, you've got to weigh up what goes where. And of course, fact or fiction, a very powerful tool with Tasiga as well.
My goodness, it is.
Just A, being able to cast it easily, but B, just adding more cards to the graveyard for that ability. I mean, some would say that that's a negative, to be honest, being able to...
he can now return, useless cards.
Exactly.
That's the Ether...
Ooh, the whale.
The whale. The Delve, for instance, and Sorceries ones. I can't recall the names of it.
See if we can find that one. If I can type. I really can't type today. Ethereal Forager. There we go.
Another Commander Legends recent printing, which I have played against today, and it is a lot better than it appears on the surface.
6 mana, Delve, flying 3/3. When it attacks, you see Calvin's added the 4 instants and sorceries that he delved under there. When it attacks, he gets one of those cards back to his hand.
The downside, of course, being if it is removed prior to being able to attack, you have exiled your instants and sorceries.
Very true. So you won't see it very often in decks playing Ancestral Recall or Time Walk.
Indeed.
Those sort of high value targets. Much better in these sort of grindy decks where you're just exiling Fact or Fiction, Abrupt Decay, Drown in the Lock.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose these cards. But the upside is quite good.
Exactly, even facing down the Baleful Strix.
Let's see Calvin's timing here. Attack, grabbing Abrupt Decay, and casting it before blocks. Yeah, alright. Casting it before blocks, getting the Baleful Strix out of there to make sure that the Forager does get its damage through and survives the attack.
Yeah, I can see where Niall's coming from with that confusion, because it feels like Calvin shouldn't be allowed to do that, but unfortunately, that is how the passing of priority in phases functions.
That's right, yeah, it's, honestly, I haven't been impressed by Forager, but that attack was really nice there, to be honest. And we see Narset Parter of Veils coming down, so that's got this,
Leovold text.
Yeah, this taxing effect on drawing cards. You only get the 1 card a turn. Although you do get 1 on your opponent's turn, 1 on your turn. You're not sort of limited to exactly your draw step and nothing else.
Exactly.
Drown in the Lock as a counterspell there on the Narset. I think? No? It's an Assassin's Trophy or an Abrupt Decay. It's a black-green spell.
In response to the first activation. So preventing Calvin from finding another counterspell.
Absolutely.
Although his Force of Negation is currently under the Ethereal Forager, so unless he's playing Pointed Force as well.
We see Toxic Deluge, paying 3 life. Once again, I'm going to have to chastise him again for this. You
Not
see that
attacking.
Snapcaster Mage that didn't attack?
Yep.
I can't believe he's done this.
I can't believe he's done this. I want to slap you, make the sound effect.
Unbelievable.
And there goes that nice grip of instants and sorceries for
Yeah,
Calvin.
the good news is none of them, you're not exiling your Time Walk and that sort of thing under there.
Indeed. The
So
most
you-
impactful spell was probably the FOF.
Yeah, the Fact or Fiction, the Force, they're all fine cards. You're very happy to have them back. We do see Force of Will there
Oh, he is playing the other point of
in
force.
the Ponder. That looks like Force. I'm leaning over in my chair to try to get a better view, but it's not helping because it's a 2D image that I'm looking at. So just some pro tips for you at home. If you tilt your head, you won't get a better look at Calvin's hand.
And if you turn your GameCube controller, you won't turn tighter in Mario
Are
Kart.
you sure about that, though?
It's the Wiimotes that do that.
All right, and Niall getting in with the
Tar Pit.
creeping tar pit. When all else is dead, the creeping tar pit still stands.
Still stands, still slithers on.
Yeah, creeping, slithering towards victory. It's a slow process, but it'll get there. And here we see the escape on the Cling to Dust. As I mentioned, it feels like 3 days ago. If the game goes on late, then the Cling to Dust can cash itself in for another card. At the mere cost of 5 cards from Calvin's graveyard
And
here.
4 mana.
So the longer the game goes, the more that Cling to Dust can sort of accrue advantage. which is
Exactly.
really neat.
And Niall does still have that Uro, I believe. And Calvin, at the moment, probably just digging for the second part of his combo because he does still have his Thassa's Oracle in hand.
Yeah, we
which
do
is
know
obviously
about the
something
Oracle
that
in
Niall
hand.
knows about it as well.
Now, Niall, I spoke to him in between rounds, and he said I asked him what he doesn't want to play against, and he said Oracle.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the tournament organizer heard that and decided, look, we're just gonna ruin this guy's day. He's come all the way from Ballarat, travelled from the country,
My word.
and
That's dedication to the game.
look, his holiday plans did include going to New South Wales.
Oh dear.
Yeah, for those not in the know, New South Wales just got locked down here in Australia. No one can enter or leave, basically. There's some nuance to it, but that's the easiest way to put it. A Thought
Exactly.
Scour.
Hitting a Thoughtseize and Calvin's own Creeping Tar Pit.
Okay. Won't be seeing those again. And a Deathrite Shaman. So Graveyard's really an interesting resource on both sides of the table here.
Indeed.
Between Uro, Cling to Dust, Deathrite Shaman,
Tassiger's
Tassiger.
potentially on both sides. Ethereal Forager
Yeah,
from Calvin.
Drown in the Lock on both sides as well. We see
Absolutely.
that's Counterspell in those top 3 for Niall there. You've got to be tempted to take that if you're him.
Absolutely.
Just
because you know that your opponent's going to be casting meaningful spells in
That's
the near
right,
future.
yeah. As well, specifically that Thassa's Oracle.
Absolutely.
Niall does, he doesn't have the best combo matchup in this 4-color mid-range deck. It's relatively light on counterspells.
Especially pre-sideboarding. I mean, my plan pre-sideboard is my 4-color no-blue mid-range deck coming against Oracle is beat them to death
Yeah,
quickly.
pray.
I almost managed it in game 1 against Billinghurst. I had a leveled up Hex Drinker and a Treetop Village, but unfortunately, Billinghurst did get me on 3 life.
Oof. Treetop Village is it's a nice clock. You see a lot of decks foregoing it these days to play a 4th color instead.
Indeed.
Although here you are playing 4 colors and Treetop Village.
I'm an ambitious man, if nothing else.
Who needs basics, hey?
I played 2.
Oh, okay.
2 whole basics. I squeezed them in.
2 more than I expected. And we see Oko. So there's a lot of very similar cards on both sides of the field
You
here.
definitely see a fair bit of overlap between just the generically powerful permanents and answers in the green, blue, and black section of the colour pie.
Yeah, that's right. So Niall, of course, has access to red cards on top, and they're choosing to spend their points differently. One of them is playing Thassa's Oracle, we know about in Calvin's hand. That's 3 of his 7 points. Niall, we saw in a previous round, a little bit of spoilery action here. He's playing Ancestral Recall as his large pointed card of choice.
So that's 4 points, and then he's also paying 1 for Snapcaster and 1 for Oko, and then
That's right.
A mystery 7th point, or do we know what that is?
I don't know if I've seen it, but Niall deciding once again get in with the tar pit, not
Absolutely.
going towards the Oko, which is
He needs to win through combat damage.
yeah. I mean, Oko, among other things, Oko also does pretty well at negating combat damage with the food every turn.
Absolutely.
So the food costing 2 mana every turn, but the
Negating all of the Creeping Tar Pit's damage.
and the tar pit costs 4 mana in its 3 mana plus its self activation. That Bone Crusher Giant on an adventure. Deathrite Shaman ate the Snapcaster to gain some life, and then
Absolutely stomped in.
yeah, ate a boot as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the food got sacrificed as well. So, as we just said, there's a lot of pressure being answered by this Oko.
It's potentially why the Thoracle players are now very tempted to add green into their decks, foregoing the traditional Esper or Grixis. And there we have.
The combos put on the stack, counterspells put on the stack, cryptic
Command
commands put on the stack.
And that's all she wrote.
Niall not even waiting to see the exiled deck. Well, what can you do,
I would definitely be tempted to take a look, because a lot of these Oracle decks, some of them are playing Spellseeker, others are not.
Very
and
true.
You can also see a fair amount of variation with regards to the concentration of removal in the deck.
Just getting an idea, seeing...
Which can inform, Niall's sideboarding.
Exactly. Being able to just see, is there anything strange here that I need to consider playing around?
Absolutely.
Is there a bunch of flash threats that just weren't seen in that game?
Mm-hmm.
Is there
a Tail's End?
That is a Tail's End at the top of the pile of cards
I love
there.
that card.
Is there a card like, say, Stifle, where I need to be playing around it?
Mm-hmm.
One of those big blowout cards. I mean, there's Opposition Agent. Is there a Hull Breacher as well?
I would certainly not be surprised to see a Hull Breacher out of an Oracle deck, especially considering
Absolutely.
how land light yet mana intensive the deck can function. I have built a blue, black, red, green mid-range deck recently, which I've been playing in our prolific webcam tournaments over the last couple of months here in Australia and overseas against our American and European compatriots. And I certainly seem to have landed on a very similar build to Niall, in that the red is definitely the splash colour in this deck. In the main deck, you're probably only looking at that Bone Crusher Giant, potentially a Dak Faden if you're expecting a lot of artifacts, and then obviously the two best sideboard cards in the format, Red Blast and Pyroblast.
Look, I like the green Red Elemental Blast in Veil of Summer. I think that's a good one.
Absolutely it is. Wouldn't be surprised to see that main decking. I wonder if Niall is also playing Direfleet Daredevil out of his sideboard, because I am a big fan of that card at the moment, especially with the abundance of 4-point blue instants that are going around.
Very true, yeah. If you manage to steal an opponent's Ancestral or Time Walk, number one, you get the value of casting that card yourself. Number two, you've actually exiled it from your opponent's graveyard, and that has value on its own.
Absolutely. Really taking out a central cog of your opponent's machine, especially if they've constructed their deck around it.
That's exactly it. You're not putting in a 4-point card without the ability to cast it a second time, a third time, a 12th time.
Yeah. I think I've seen decks with that feature these cards that play regrowth, and they're never getting a permanent with that. They're getting their pointed instance.
That's exactly it. Now on Calvin's side, what would you expect out of the sideboard for him? Are we going to see perhaps a shaving of the combo?
I don't think we'd see a shaving of the combo, I think, because I believe that Calvin is probably aware that just because of the construction of the deck being thinner on counterspells and cantrips, Niall can almost definitely outclass him pound for pound in terms of permanent-based threats and aggression.
Sure.
Calvin could, if he was to take that path, go definitely the more controlling route and up his count of counterspells and removal, although I'm not sure which one of those would all be in the sideboard rather than being already mainboarded.
Yeah.
My guess, based on my experience of playing against this deck, we'd see a fair few we might see some counter red spells. We may see some Hydroblasts coming in. I would definitely expect to see Submerge as a powerful counter tempo.
Submerge is very good.
As a powerful counter tempo tool against Niall. And in addition to that, you'd probably be trying to trim and adjust your counter and removal suite to answer what it was that your opponent was playing. So, for example, if you were playing Abrupt Decay and you saw that your opponent had a lot of big fatties, you may be trimming the Abrupt Decay for something more impactful.
Would you be... I have no idea on the construction of Calvin's deck. Do you think there might be room for a back to basics? Is that a card that we could see influencing the game here?
That's certainly an innovative and novel idea. Personally, I haven't encountered a deck running that particular enchantment. However, I believe if he was running it, you would most likely be mainboarding that. Just because even if you do, the negative there is obviously when you run up against a deck against which Back to Basics has very little stock. But the positive factors of the fact that most decks Back to Basics does absolutely hose, and the surprise factor of getting them in game one, I think outweighs the negatives.
Very true. We can see is that a Demonic Consultation?
That is a Demonic Consultation.
Tainted Pact? One or the other.
I think it's Tainted Pact. Demonic Consultation has a gentleman with a blade in the artwork.
Sure, yeah.
But they are certainly both very similar in the colour palette.
So there's at least some amount of the combo element still in here.
Oh, the number of times you play against the Oracle player, and they just have the combo in their opening hand. It's the beauty of only having to play 2 cards to get your game-winning combo.
Yeah, definitely. I guess the other black mark against playing back to basics here would be Calvin is restricted in his basic count. Now, you could go all the way up to 6 basics, but you never have the ability to play a 3rd basic island if you're playing Tainted Pact Demonic Consultation.
I see, yeah.
I mean, there's some argument that you could probably get away with a 3rd.
It's too much of a risk. So I think, you definitely could take that risk, I suppose, but I've always been a bit of a conservative deck builder when it comes to not wanting to interrupt the natural flow of my deck, and you certainly would be grinding against what it was that your deck was centrally trying to achieve.
Yeah.
By thinking, because then you've added a step to the fundamental plan of the deck there. Step 1 has become get an island out of my deck, and then execute the rest of your plan.
That makes sense. We saw in the very early period of innovating this deck, we saw a lot of the 2-color builds just adding a 3rd color for better mana. I know that sounds strange, but when you're limited to only playing 2 basic islands and 2 basic swamps, you just ran out of good lands to play, and you needed to add a 3rd color.
That makes a lot of sense for why, when I played against Billinghurst, he played Traverse the Ulvenwald against me in 2 of the games, and in one of those games, he obviously did go and get his Thassus Oracle, because who wouldn't want a tutor for their 3-point card? But in game 1 or 2, it was literally just getting an island. That was it. And
we see here Gataxian Probe getting us some information. We see a Fire, Ice, Ashiok Dream Render, Lightning Bolt, Renin 6, and Badlands.
I love that hand. I love everything about that hand.
And it looks like Calvin might not have a... Oh, never mind. I was going to say might not have an answer for the Renin 6 leading off of the basic swamp, but here we are. Inquisition Kozilek.
That's certainly thrown a wrench into Niall's gears, because now he lacks that critical 3rd land.
Absolutely. Now, there is still the ice in hand to draw a card. Just cycle itself, get 1 more look at another land. So there's still 2 more draws that Niall has access to.
I was about to ask if ice can target lands, and it can.
It can. Target permanent.
My word.
So, even with the Renin 6 inquired away, there was still 3 draw steps to hit another land. Splendid. Once you include the Fire Ice.
Yep. And with the reliance on tutors and the graveyard, Ashiok Dream Render is just a phenomenal card against this build of Oracle.
Dream Render just shuts down the opponent's deck hard here, absolutely. We see Calvin maybe prioritising that fetch land higher than he would have. It might have been possible that he wanted to leave the fetch land in hand till later, save it for a Brainstorm or something like that. But just firing it off first here because of the threat of that Ashiok Dream Render, as well as, Opposition Agent is a card to think about.
Indeed.
It's really changing the rules on when you're supposed to fetch. There was, some small thoughts of fetching main phase to deal with cards like Stifle and that sort of thing. But Opposition Agent is just the be-all and end-all of those, It took what Aven Mindsensor was doing and ran with it.
Oh, I love Aven Mindsensor, and Opposition Agent is such a... it's almost so powerful of an evolution that I'm almost sad to see it occur, because it means that one of my favourite cards has lost a fair bit of relevance.
That's right. So we see Mental Note here. I always like to ask who you're targeting, because it doesn't actually target. Milling over Tassiga, and is that a Hull Breacher and drawing a card?
Yes, it is.
And then Ashiok resolving, going for the -4, exiling Calvin's graveyard there.
We hit 2 lands, Thoughtseize, and Deathrite Shaman with the Ashiok minus. So no critical combo pieces just yet. If we'd hit the Oracle there, that would have just been the bee's knees, so to speak.
So Hull Breacher down.
Hull Breacher down.
1 fewer card for Niall to stress about running headfirst into.
Oh, and talk about running headfirst into good blue cards. Good blue 3-drops even.
The buff boy is here.
Oh.
Here to raise havoc and make food.
Daddy Oko. Put a shirt on.
So Ashiok tends to have this effect where it just sits on the board, threatening to use its exile the graveyard ability, but not really needing to. In this situation, it might be able to pull that off for 1 turn, but it's not going to be able to sit there forever.
Absolutely not.
Presenting that static forever.
Especially given the impending elk threat.
Exactly, yeah. If this Ashiok loses 1 more loyalty, goes down to 3, you lose the prison effect on it straight up the next turn.
Absolutely.
We see his Sylvan Library. One of the cards.
Moose target.
Yeah, and one of the no, it can't be elked. It's not the
What
right.
oh, I see. Oh, it's only artifacts and creatures, is it?
Yeah, but it's a card that would have run headfirst into that Hull Breacher had that card still existed. It's not the worst one in that you can opt out after you see the opponent's Hull Breacher, but just being able to have it turned off by your opponent's 3/2 is quite powerful.
It was interesting play there. We just saw Nile target themselves with Ashiok's minus, but obviously the wording of the ability means that Nile's graveyard does not get exiled.
Correct.
Nile potentially searching for fuel for maybe a Del spell that they may have in their hand. I haven't seen anything overly relevant just yet.
And ticking it down did mean it was weak to the Elk there. The answer to that was a Lightning Bolt. The answer to that was a Blue Elemental Blast. And here we see Narset, Parter of Veils. So that's,
I'm not surprised to see either of those cards still present in Calvin's deck. They're certainly quite relevant in this type of matchup.
very similar to Hull Breacher in that it just turns off the Sylvan Library.
Absolutely.
The Sylvan Library's still there. You still can say yes to its ability, but you really kind of don't want to here.
You can't draw the additional cards at the start.
So, I mean, you could do it and you just end up paying 4 life to keep the one card you've drawn this turn, which is not really where you'd want to be.
Which was going to happen anyway.
So that Sylvan Library, we're just going to pretend it's not there. It's exiled under Narset for now. And here we see Oko is just going to continue the slow effect that he tends to have on these games. You know, there's a reason that he's at a point. There's a reason that people point to him and say, "Why is this not 2 points?" And there's a reason that he's banned in so many formats.
So many formats.
In that,
Can't believe a world existed where Oko was played in Standard. That just, it blows my mind.
you know, it doesn't do anything amazing the turn it comes down, but it will keep happening.
Yep, absolutely. It's up there with plenty of other game-ending planeswalkers, which your opponent they need to answer it eventually.
Now, we don't have to worry about what other formats do in multiple copies of Oko. You know, once the Oko's gone, the food is no longer a factor. But in other formats, you know, that's a super relevant play.
Indeed.
Him to Turret coming down, eating just a...
Hardcast Force Negation, and I believe Nile is now out of cards and facing down this incredibly commanding
absolutely.
board
And
state.
a Portent coming down from Calvin. Calvin going for the Ponder U option.
That was very fun to play over webcam. You would rip the top cards of your library, you would look the other direction and hold them up to the webcam. Your opponent would need to describe, the second card from the left, my left or your left? Your left. No, wait, my left.
Gross. Absolutely hate it.
Oh, another great one is that in my build of this blue, black, red, green, I am playing Gonti, Lord of Luxury.
Sure.
Which is that 2 and 2 black, 2/3 with Death Touch that gets you a card out of your opponent's library off of the top 4 cards, and that was certainly fun because the card that you take is hidden information until it is cast.
That's right. So just going through fetching a Triome here in the end of turn.
Looks like Nile drew a swamp for his turn on the last turn.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin portenting his opponent, Ponder U is a good way to make sure your opponent isn't drawing gas. We're here for round 4 of Moxing Day 2020, hosted by Tabernacle Games at Maze of Fitzroy. If Highlander's not your jam, number 1, why are you watching this? But number 2, Modern is on tomorrow, so we will be back with more coverage tomorrow. It might be through this same channel. It might be somewhere else. We'll have to wait and see.
We'll have to see how the technology cooperates.
That's right. Second Elk coming across here. An attack for 6. So this is quite a powerful clock here. There's only a couple of turns left in it for Nile.
Absolutely. It's a veritable stampede.
And Nile just saying, that'll do for me.
Absolutely.
Oko, as I said, not having a fast effect on the game, but does have a very powerful effect on the game. That'll be all you see from us for this round. I'm going to find out how long there is left on the clock. If there's sufficient time, then perhaps we'll drag someone into the booth and order them to discuss their deck and their day so far and see how they've gone. But outside of that, thanks for joining us for round 4, and we'll see you back for round 5. Thanks, Porrig.
My pleasure. Toodaloo.